about woman's true desire. We want to look at what happened. We want to know that the life that we live as women today is not the life that God ordained in the beginning. So we want to go backwards and look and see what happened. So the topic under woman's true desire is it wasn't so in the beginning. And what was God's intent for women? So if you can write down your questions, I'd appreciate it. So when we have Q&A, you will have your questions answered, hopefully. And so we're going to get started. Okay, so now I got to figure out. Okay, there we go. Let's go back to the Garden of Eden, okay? So God Himself gave Adam a companion. And let me just move a little bit here because I can't see all of my words and I can't even move it. Sean, do you know how to move, how I can move this? Because I'm not even able to move my cursor on here when I'm sharing.
What exactly is blocking?
The people, myself, my picture, if I can, but I'm
So
looking at trying, I can't get the cursor. Are you, okay, wait a minute.
you minimize.
It, I know I'm trying to do that and it's not,
Yeah,
yeah,
I would have to see what it looks like in your
I
end.
know, I know, and I can't uh, move it for some reason. Okay, I can't seem to get to the beginning. Oh well, I'll have to try to read it without reading it. Um, let me see. Is there any other way that I could move this, Sean?
Uh, do you see what exactly do you see on your
Yeah,
end?
I'm not able to use my cursor. That's one of the big issues. If I could move the cursor, I could get it out of the way, but the
Oh,
cursor's not doing it. So
the cursor isn't responding?
no, for some reason it's not. It's not responding where I want it to be. It's responding on, it's just coming out.
Hmm.
Uh,
I'm
okay.
sorry. I wish. Yeah, it's
All right.
hard to tell. Not being.
Yeah, I'll just do my best.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, let's go back to the beginning when God created Adam and Eve. Okay. It says God Himself gave Adam a companion. He provided an helpmeet for him, a helper corresponding to him, one who was fitted to be his companion and who would be one with him in love and sympathy. Eve was created from a rib taken from the side of Adam, signifying that she was not to control him as the head, nor be trampled under his feet as an inferior, but to stand by his side as an equal, to be loved and protected by him. And that's what we need to realize. Let's look at the some of the adjectives to what she was to be and what he was to be. And it says that he was to protect her and not be she wasn't supposed to be inferior to him. I don't like the fact that I can't read this whole thing, but okay. So, as a part of man, bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh, she was his second self, showing the close union and the affectionate attachment that should exist in this relation. For no man ever yet hated his flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one. And I'm going to try one more time to move this because it's really interfering with what I can and cannot see. And I don't like that. Um, hmm. Has anybody else got any answers on that? What I could do here? Anybody?
Think you could share your screen? Can you share your screen so I can see what it looks like in your end?
I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that, but yeah, it's just the cursor won't show up, but it moves something. Remote control. I don't know.
Uh,
Chat. So
so so you can't see your presentation to read. Is that what you're saying?
right, right. Yes, that's the problem. I'm gonna have to try to fill in words, and I don't want to fill in words.
So
Uh,
we could, that's a good suggestion from Sister Pat. We could ask if someone would like to read for you. Would that work?
for some of the things it might work, but yeah. So I don't know what to do. Okay. Okay. So, okay. It says, anyway, I'll do my best. And therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one. That was God's intention, that there was such to be such a union between the two. He to protect her and she to fulfill him. And she was to be his helpmeet. Okay. All right, so does God care for women? God cares for women. These five daughters of Zelophehad, in Numbers, it talks about they were concerned about some property that was they inherited, but there was no male. It says, our father died in the wilderness, and he was not in the company of them that gathered themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but died in his own sin and had no sons. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, the daughters of Zelophehad speak right. Thou shalt surely give them a possession of inheritance among their father's brethren, and thou shalt cause the inheritance of their father to pass unto them. Now, a lot of people feel that because the Bible seems to be a male book, that the women were not thought of, that they were not taken advantage of by men. But God had a different intent. God knew the purpose. He had a purpose for women. And so we're going to look at what some other things about what he did, okay? Okay, so it's so important to understand that a woman was so important. A woman is a symbol of the church. So why would, if it wasn't important, if the character of women was not important, why would God then make it her a symbol of the church? And the church are the people. So women of the Bible uses. Okay, can somebody, because this is really, I can't see it. So can somebody read that one for me?
I can read that.
Okay.
Hebrews 11, verse 11. And by
Hmm.
faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. Hebrews 11, verse 31. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. Judges 4, verse 4. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lippodath, was leading Israel at that time. Luke 2, verse 36. There was also a prophet, Anna, the daughter of Penuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was very old. She had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage.
Okay, so we can see God did use a lot of women in the Bible, and these are just a few excerpts from the Bible showing some of the women that lived during that time. Okay, so let's continue on. All right, so then we have a section here at Proverbs 31 woman is not a prisoner. And today I want us to see, we're going to cover, first of all, what God intended and what happened. So in Proverbs 31, the quote in Adventist Home says, the Christian mother's sphere of usefulness should not be narrowed by her domestic life. The I can't see that word. The saluter. Can someone tell me that word? Oh, I just moved it. Oh, oh wow.
Salutary.
If that's what it's salutary.
Yes.
Okay, I can't see it. Influence which she exerts in the home. I almost was able to move this, and eh, it was moving, but then it didn't move. I don't like this. Okay. All right. So anyway, so the so her influence was which she exerts in the home circle. She may and will make felt in more widespread usefulness in her neighborhood and in the church. Home is not a prison to devoted wife and mother. So what's that saying is that the domestic life of a woman should not be the only thing that concerns her. Her gifts and talents that she had should be able to be expressed outside of the home circle. So she was not to just be home and take care of home and husband and all of those. Women are needed today for some very special needs out there. And we know today there are a lot of single mothers. There are nursing skills that women need. There's a lot of things that women can be a part of, besides being stuck, as some people would call it, to her home. Okay? So, what happened? No law, no protection. This quote comes from Woman's True Desire. It says, women are to be protected if they are to survive. Every traditional society has recognized this and enshrined that protection in law as a woman's right and a man's duty. But no king, no law. No law, no protection, neither for individuals nor for society as a whole. And of course, the first to suffer individually and collectively are always the women. Now I'm going to open it up for a little conversation or questions as I go along. I don't want you to wait till the total end, but if there's any comments, and I can't see if you do, because if you did, just unmute yourself and speak. Any questions on this? So we know today that laws were made to protect women. They have not always been fulfilled, as we shall see. Okay? Any questions on that? All righty, let's go on. Well, I am just being overwhelmed with all of these things popping up on my screen, uh, and I can't get rid of them. Man was to be the protector, but man becomes the abuser. Anybody know what this picture is of without looking at it or reading the title? Has anybody ever seen this before? Anybody? Okay. This is called the Spanish donkey. So women have been abused for many, many years. We're going way back, Bible time. There was polygamy and women forced to marry against their will. In early Roman society, women was deemed property of man and subject to his control. Under the common law in England, a man could beat his wife to maintain family discipline. Misogyny, men who are prejudiced against women. There was rape, molestation, incest. In medieval times, horrific tortures to her body if if caught or thought to have committed adultery. They would have things called the breast ripper, the Spanish donkey, which is the picture we're looking at, female circumcision, scold's bridle, chastity belt, and sawed in half. So a lot of wicked things were done to women way back, even starting back in Bible times, which was not it was not part of his plan for women. But man, who was supposed to be the protector, now becomes an abuser. This is a picture of the breast ripper. The breast ripper was an appalling device that caused immense pain in its female victims. The instrument consisted of two large pointed prongs that would, as the title suggests, tear into women's breasts and rip the tissue clean off the body. Occasionally, the prongs were heated as well. It was meant to mark the bodies of women who had conducted a miscarriage or were accused of adultery. The use of the instrument was put to an end during the Middle Ages. Has anybody ever seen one of those instruments before? You see, we need to know history. We need to know what happened. Why are we as women fighting for our rights way back in the 1900s? What was this all about? Where did it come from? And so as we look at the past and the history of what happened to women, we can almost see why there's such a fight today. Okay, this is called the chastity belt. This was something that they put on women to keep them from having sex if their husbands went away or, or whatever the case may be. This metal thing was put on her groin area to keep her from, somebody had raised their hand. Can somebody answer that? I can't use my cursor. You can just unmute yourself and talk.
Okay. Hi, Sister Dawson. So, what were the laws that were in place to protect women?
What I want you to understand is that in the beginning, that's what God intended, that man was to be a protector. And
Okay.
that's what goes back to Bible times. So that's where it was supposed to have been the laws that were written, he had for widows and for, in the
Okay.
Bible. Those were the laws we're talking about. Because even going back into the Bible time, even way back in Genesis, the abuse that women, having to be, because God never intended for a man to have more than one wife. And so all of those were abuses to the female. And so there was polygamy and all of that, which created a lot of unhappiness in the families. And that's what God did not intend to happen. Okay, so in the beginning, it was not so. But all of these things, as they happen and grew and grew and grew, and more of these things continue to happen, even to this day, causes something to happen with women. Okay, so abuse continues even today. It also stated that the FBI estimated that one woman in the United States is beaten every 18 seconds. It is estimated that between 2,000 and 4,000 women will die each year from abuse. And that's where that quote comes from. So women have been, it's been getting worse and worse since way back when. But that was not what God intended. We need to recognize sin has really taken its toll on every aspect of life, of women, children, our medical systems, our home life. Everything that we do today is not what God intended for us as a people. And sin just grew and grew. And but we need to understand, what is it that God wants for us today? Okay, what does he want us to come back to? Now, every situation is going to be different. So I know there's people that are going to say, well, what about the woman by a single mom, or the one that's divorced, or the widow, or things like that? Every case is individual, but we still should understand what God intended and what happened. And so that's what we're going to cover today. So what happens when a woman denies her need to be protected while continuing to feel the need to be loved? In the book, Woman's True Desire, it talks about women as they started fighting more for their rights. They don't want men to protect them. They want to protect themselves. And we'll see that as we go along. But yet at the same time, they want to be loved. Okay? So her hands upon the threshold. The heart of a woman is like a compass whose needle points ever to love, no matter what direction she takes. Now, if you read in the book, if you have the book, Woman's True Desire, there's a story about the Levite and the concubine and what happened then. And I'm not going to tell the whole story, but if you can, I don't have what book it's in. I thought it was in Genesis, but I'm not sure. But anyway, what happened is that after she was abused, thrown out to the men in Sodom, and she was let go, she still went back to the place where she was thrown out from, because she was still seeking the love that this man had promised her a day before. And sometimes we wonder, when women are abused in a situation and they get out of it, but then they still go back to the same man that abused them, because women are very sensitive to words. And if he's promising her that he's going to take care of her, love her, he's going to go get therapy and all of this, she hangs on to those words, hoping that he is going to be true to them. And yet she goes right back to the same abusive situation. And we know what happens. Even unto death, this happens, because a woman's compass is always pointing to love. And so what happened is that women started fighting back. And this is why you have all of these different systems of fighting, called the women's suffrage movement. It says the women's suffrage movement actually began in 1848, when a women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York. The Seneca Falls meeting was not the first in support of women's rights, but suffragists later viewed it as the meeting that launched the suffrage movement. For the next 50 years, women's suffrage supporters worked to educate the public about the validity of women's suffrage. Under the leadership of Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and other women's rights pioneers, suffragists circulated petitions and lobbied Congress to pass a constitutional amendment to enfranchise women. Okay? If there's any comments, just unmute and make a comment, okay? Because I can't control anything from here with my computer. Does anybody have a thought or a question on that? Okay. So this was the beginning of women starting to fight back. And it continued. This is way back in 1848. Okay, so that's what happened. So the women's suffrage movement. Can I have somebody read this, please? Because it's part of mine is blocked. Can someone read it for me, please?
Meanwhile, many
Amen.
American women
Go ahead.
were beginning to chafe against what historians have called the cult of true womanhood. That is, the idea that the only true woman was a pious, submissive wife and mother concerned exclusively with home and family. Put together, all of these contributed to a new way of thinking about what it meant to be a woman and a citizen in the United States.
Okay,
Women's
so
Suffrage Historian.com editors.
okay, so what do you think about that? What do you think about that comment? Was a woman supposed to be just a submissive wife and concerned exclusively with home and family?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And so, because when you read when you read the information on Proverbs 31, she is not just chained to her home and her family. She is a career person, but also engaged in her home. Okay, and we're going to look at that a little bit more. So we're not talking about um, fighting for women's rights. We're talking about what power. See, we already were empowered. We didn't need laws to empower us. God has already empowered us as women. He has given us characteristics that are going to be used to raise families and take care of even anybody outside the home. But we tend to fight for what a man has, the principles of not principles, but the character and the type of jobs and stuff the man has. We tend to try to fight for those instead of fighting for the true characteristics that God has given us that are so powerful. So now we have the women's liberation and feminist movement in 1960s and 1980s. As we can see, judge women as people, not as wives, because wives were being abused in many ways. And so that's why they started fighting again. So that happened. The other one was 1948, and this is 1960s and 1980s. So it's getting bigger. Before it was a suffrage movement, and now it's a liberation movement. So this is a little video clip that I have about a woman who, I just want you to listen to this. Oh, now my cursor wants to work. Now I got rid of the, okay. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. All right, so let's look at this.
For decades, the feminist movement has tried to erase the differences between the sexes, between men and women. And now a leading female author says those efforts have damaged American society.
Whether they're claiming gender discrimination in classrooms, downplaying the importance of men and fathers, criticizing women who choose to stay home and raise their kids, or calling marriage an oppressive institution, Kate O'Byrne says feminists for decades have gotten it wrong. In her new book, Women Who Make the World Worse, the Washington editor of National Review magazine and former panelist on CNN's The Capitol Gang says the feminist movement has done more harm than good. And she says their vigorous assault is ruining our schools, damaging families, and instigating an all-out war between the sexes.
Well, with us from our Washington studio is the author of Women Who Make the World Worse, Kate O'Byrne. And Kate, it's a pleasure to have you back with us in the 700 Club.
Thank you, Reverend Robinson. Pleased to be with you.
Listen, what's the deal? I thought that with the passing of Betty Friedan and Bella Abzug that the feminist movement was in decline. Is that not the case?
You have an awful lot of company. The reason I wrote this book is because far too many people think feminism died with the Equal Rights Amendment. It seems so 1970s to talk about feminism. The point of this book is to explain to my readers that the most dangerous, destructive premises of the modern women's movement are very much alive and have enormous influence in our schools and universities, in our culture, in our politics. The goals, the consensus goals of equal rights, the matters of simple justice, those goals were achieved long ago But these women persist in weakening the family, imposing quotas on college sports, peddling the notion to our daughters that marriage is an oppressive institution. I name names and I quote the women who hold these views. They're not household names, but they're enormously influential nonetheless.
Well, you named a few that were household names, such as the sitting Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What is her misconception?
Well, as you well remember, before she was elevated to the Court of Appeals and then the Supreme Court, she was a leading feminist legal theorist. I remind people in the book, she's one of those, like the other woman I cite in this book, who refuse to recognize that there are any innate differences between men and women. So when people like Justice Ginsburg see demonstrable differences in attitudes or aptitudes or abilities, she attributes it to discrimination. These women cannot allow that in 2006, American women enjoy full equal rights and virtually unlimited opportunity because they're grievance feminists. They have to always fight the notion that American women face widespread discrimination. And as long as they deny innate differences between the sexes, they're going to find those differences.
You pointed out something. Cemetery, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that there are then, would you say, Kate, two different groups in feminism? I mean, wouldn't you agree that maybe something good came out of modern feminism or the beginnings of it? For example, greater career opportunities, higher salaries. Now you're talking about a group that's a little more in-depth and intense than that.
I never had any quarrel, as most women didn't 30 years ago, with the matters of simple justice. Of course, women shouldn't face discrimination. Discrimination in employment and education have been outlawed at the federal level for over 30 years. I always parted ways with the modern women's movement because I never believed that marriage and family life were a patriarchal plot. I never believed that there were no differences between men and women, that they were interchangeable. And I never believed that women's equality rested on the unrestricted right to abortion for 9 months. That is the agenda, though, that the modern women's movement, under the false flag of equal rights, continues to pursue. And I show the kind of damage it's done to our institutions.
Kate, you said, and I want to quote, the modern woman's movement is totalitarian in its methods, radical in its aims, and dishonest in its advocacy. Do you want to expand on that?
Absolutely. Of course, they impose a strict monolithic test on other women. I, of course, for having written this book, am considered an enemy of my sex, a weak-minded tool of the patriarchy, because of the monolith that they enforce. Their advocacy, which I take apart chapter by chapter, and in doing so, cite the other women who fight the modern feminists, who expose their phony research, who expose their lies. They intimidate lawmakers with the kind of advocacy research they do. Many people are surprised to find how much federal money subsidizes the agenda of the radical agenda of the modern women's movement. And so I lay it out in chapter by chapter, the effect on family, on marriage, on sports, on the military, and on politicians who are intimidated by the feminists today.
Kate, talk a little bit about these deeply rooted feminists and their position on marriage. They see it as an oppressive institution. Where did that concept come from for them?
We've been warned for well over 30 years. One of the founders of Ms. Magazine, which remains the flagship publication of the modern women's movement, said back then, you cannot destroy inequality between men and women until you destroy marriage. And I quote the influential feminists who continue to hold those views, the kind of agenda they're pushing in our universities and our young people. They believe that the emotional bonds of marriage are the enemy of women's equality. They feel the same way about the emotional bonds between parent and child. They believe fathers are unnecessary. They see the traditional role of father and mother as crippling stereotypes. I explained who they are, what they're up to, and the kind of federal money that they receive.
Last question, you mentioned about Hillary Clinton and her book, It Takes a Village to Raise a Child. She is a leading candidate for President of the United States. What would a Clinton presidency bring us in regard to the issues that you're discussing?
Well, Hillary Clinton has a long record of endorsing all the central aims of the modern women's movement. She endorses the phony notion that American women face a discriminatory wage gap. She, of course, backs, and she and her husband pushed very heavily during the 90s, a big federal child care scheme, which in no way responds to the needs of young families with small children, given the choices they're freely making with respect to sacrificing income in order to have a mother home with children. She endorses hyping the evidence of domestic violence in an assault against men and marriage. She, of course, endorses, despite her new rhetoric, the unrestricted right to abortion for 9 months. She would be a reliable ally of the modern women's movement.
Okay, thank you for being with us. Kate O'Byrne, ladies and gentlemen, book Women Who Make the World Worse. Again, get your blood pressure medicine before you read the book, but it's worth a read.
All right, so that was some information. It's very old, but it's also up to date too, because we have those characteristics or things that she was pushed in are still being pushed in our schools today. And the sad part is that also they're being pushed into our church. So what is the results of women's liberation and feminist movement? The goal was equality between the sexes, but the option presented was companionship between the sexes. And what we ended up with was antagonism between the sexes. And that was when the fight was, we all can do it, okay? Phases of the movement. Women's true desire is now on the brink of suicide, assaulted by the insecurity that plagues the emotional lives of women who claim they do not need to be protected and therefore must deny their need to be loved. And that comes, WTD is Woman's True Desire, and that's on page 31. So the first wave of feminism is we want to be equal to men. The second wave of feminism is we don't need men. And the third wave of feminism, we are men. So you see, it has taken a lot of exchanges from one thing. It started off with one thing and ended up to be many things that we see today. So today, such women have to speak it on their own. They speak loud and long about equality. They demand equality. They impose equality. They make it look as though we might have finally have emerged from the dark ages. Again, Woman's True Desire, page 31. There are two weapons that were used by them. Two weapons have been used to abolish the traditional roles of men and women in our society. One is a disdain for motherhood. The more people talk about equality, the less value raising children seems to have. In fact, women's role as mother and nurturer is seen as something to be ashamed of, forcing women to renounce it or practice it clandestinely. The other weapon is scorn for man's exclusive role as initiator in love, and thus the person responsible from beginning to end. Again, Woman's True Desire, page 57, paragraph 1. A lot of this information you're going to have to, if you really want to dig into it deeper, it comes from the book, and it gives more of a laid out foundation from one thing to the other. I'm just pulling out a few important quotes to get your attention to what the subject is all about. So, Woman's True Desire. What does she really want more than anything else? The need to be loved is etched into a woman's innermost being. So, next part of the class that we're going to have is going to be talking about what does she really want more than anything else. So, we're going to look at also the Proverbs 31 woman. She is one of strong character, great wisdom, many skills, and deep compassion. She is one who is prepared and praised. Today we can be that woman. Today we need to be that woman. Our world is full of unrest. Because of the unrest, we need to take another look at the verses in Proverbs 31. Each verse teaches strength of character in being prepared. So we're going to look at some of those things. She brings her food from afar. She makes coverings for herself. She looks well to the ways of her household. She girds herself with strength. She is not afraid of the snow for her household. And the Proverbs 31 woman was a prepared woman. Okay, I think that was the end. Yes, okay. Okay, let's get back. I'm sorry. All right, so I did kind of a quick excerpt of the book. And I wanted to lay a foundation to introduce us to the book, some thoughts that lead to the reading of the book if you don't understand anything else that's being done, that has been done in our society to create the issues that we have in our society, such as women's lib and the disdain for family and for motherhood. I'm sorry, hold on a second. I've got these things that are popping up. I really, this really has been a nerve-wracking situation because there's so many things. I have all these errors coming up on my thing, and I couldn't use my cursor. So I'm very apologetic to what has been created or what happened on this particular presentation. I don't like issues like this, and it messes with my thinking. But anyway, now we're going to do some Q&A, any questions that you may have concerning the presentation. Okay. Any questions?
Are women still taught about in the same way as we were back then today?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? Are women what?
Still taught about in the same way, when, back in the ages when they were just taught about to be mothers and wives, are that still going on today? Is that still going on today?
You mean what they have done to women?
Yeah.
Oh, that's still going on today. Yes, these thoughts are these thoughts are in women's minds all the time today because it's taught in our schools. It's taught even in our churches. We have adopted a lot of ways of the world into our church, and so it's there, very subtle, but it's there. It hasn't changed.
Okay. There's a question in the chat.
Yes, if you can read it.
It says, how can single career-driven modern women become more feminine?
How can
single career-driven modern women become more feminine?
Well, if you are a Christian and you want to be what God intended for you to be, and allow God to show you your true worth and value, then that is where it starts. It has to start, first of all, in the mind. As a Christian, there's a lot of things that are introduced to us as people, whether we're in the church or not in the church. There's things happening. And so we need to be able to go back to we can become what God wants us to be. If we want it, God will provide. And we pray about it, God will provide. He will give us the desire, which is first of all, and then he'll give us the power to be able to do that. Now, it's not a bad thing to have a career for women, as long as they don't have, see, our children are our first missionary work. And when our jobs take us away from being the mother that we should be, then we are allowing the devil to come into our homes and destroy the principles that we try to give our children. So yes, if I usually what I tell women who are interested in a career, I says go for your career before you get married. Go out if that's what you want to do, then do it, and then when you're married, hopefully you can enjoy having your family and your children because we have a lot of things that we can give as women as far as helping other women to. There's so many, like I said in the beginning, there's so many women out there who are single parents. They can't afford it. I mean, we can start nursery schools to help mothers that are single mothers and give their children an environment that is much more healthier. We can go to visit nursing homes. We can go visit people in their homes that are